Well, the U.S. bishops, they're at it again, giving the false impression that throwing open the country's borders and embracing anyone and everyone, including murderers, sex traffickers, child rapists, who come in, somehow that's Catholic. First, it ain't. The U.S. bishops should read the Catholic Catechism. Second, they don't even practice their welcome and embrace approach themselves. Ever try and get past their office staff and their security detail to get to them to be embraced? Yeah, the document coming out of their semi-annual, regularly scheduled meeting in Baltimore this week at a very plush harbor hotel, we might add, the Marriott, is so out of balance with actual Catholic teaching that it's laughable. But it will have the desired effect of being broadcast across Marxist media all over the nation. As usual, it's what's not said where the majority of damage is done. Not one time do the bishops admit the size and the scope of the problem of probably 20 million illegal, a term they refuse to use, immigrants just roaming the streets of America. There is zero admission of the crippling economic impact, the hospital crisis, the education crisis, the housing crisis, the labor force crisis, not to mention the drugs and the criminal impact that all this has. There's a very tiny, small, itty-bitty, teeny-weeny, slight tip of the hat, the acknowledgement that sex trafficking, well, that's not so nice, but then an immediate pivot back to meaningful immigration reform, whatever that hackneyed phrase means 30 years after it started getting battled about. Then there are the polite condemnatory adjectives like vilification and profiling applied to illegal immigrants. Question, Your Excellencies, how is it profiling when 98% or more of illegals are not Caucasian? Then there's the traditional and extremely dishonest blurring of the lines, pointing to generations of immigrants who built this country. That's true. But they're deliberately leaving out the truth that they were here legally, like Ellis Island, for example, not sneaking into the country by the tens of millions. Democrats and the bishops never admit that the generations of immigrants were legal immigrants. They never insert that clarification because if they did, it would bring down their entire immigrant posturing. But there's another aspect, both Democrats and bishops, they never bring this up. The personal gain to them and their bodies as they each pretend to have such care and concern for 10 to 20 million illegals. The Democrats care because those sort of numbers tip the balance in their favor in multiple congressional districts come census time, since seats are apportioned on headcounts. Seats in Congress are apportioned on headcount of populations around the country, states-wise. And to whatever degree illegals voting is also a boon for them. For the bishops, when the Democrats are in power, their immigration operations get hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars each year, taken, of course, from U.S. taxpayers. You can call it sort of forced charity. And they don't give that up. They don't give a rip about all of that so long as they get a piece of the pie. Forget struggling American families, guys, young people who can't afford to buy a house, and on and on and on. Doesn't matter as long as we get our hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars to help keep the whole freaking crazy system going. Trump has essentially cut off most of that money flowing to them since there are no illegals getting across the border anymore who need funding. Now all the charitable work is confined to those who have not yet been deported or left of their own. By the way, about 2 million, when you add those two together, 1.5 million have self-deported, another 500,000 have been deported. But as the number of illegals in the country continues to drop, so will the amount of money the bishops can weasel out of U.S. taxpayers for taking those who are still here. Going all the way back to the Reagan years, Catholic patriots realized that the U.S. bishops were little else than the Democratic Party at prayer, or better stated, Democrats in robes. The vote for this letter was 216 to 5. There were 3 abstentions. So not much has changed in 40 plus years. Fortunately for U.S. Catholics, the bishops don't get to massage church teaching in such a way as to make their own personal and political motives appear as something that we all have to bow down to and believe. We don't. Coming to you from Houston, Texas, I'm Gary Michael Voris. God love you.